Welcome, friends of the Kentucky Conference. For those that do not know me, I'm Edward Kruger, Secretary and Communication Coordinator for the Kentucky Conference United Methodist Men. I am honored to share this presentation of our Men in Ministry Igniter Kit with you. If you are listening to this video, then you are interested in transforming the men in your church into disciple makers. Now, some of these men across the conference, including the Northern Kentucky District, Southeast District, and Bluegrass District, have heard this presentation either from Drew Oakley, Mark Stallions, or myself. Our Kentucky Conference United Methodist Men Leadership Team spent several months developing a Men in Ministry action plan prior to the release of this Igniter Kit that was developed from the Southeast Jurisdiction Young Man Think Tank team. Now you see, Drew Oakley is our representative. Him and along with many others spent several months either through Zoom or attending the Southeast Jurisdiction United Methodist Men and with the Young Man Think Tank team in developing an Igniter Kit that would be brought back to the conferences and then further modified to fit the conference's need. Now you see, we took that general copy and further adapted with the ideas that we had came up with from our own many months of meetings and retreats on how, as the Conference United Methodist Men, we were going to transform the UMM across Kentucky. We are in the next phase of presenting this to all the districts and holding training sessions to those who are interested in this Igniter Kit. Again, welcome to the Kentucky Conference United Methodist Men's Men in Ministry Igniter Kit Part 1. We hope by offering you a 3-part version of the Igniter Kit that this will be able to fit your schedule, because like I say, the first part of the Igniter Kit is going to be about 15 minutes or so. Second part's a little longer, about 30, and the last part, third part, is about 17 minutes long. So we try to break it up so you can fit your schedule and easier. You can go back and continue where you left off. If you have questions about a certain section, you can go back and listen to that again. And we're still going to offer the other presentation of all this put together. So if you want to listen, just sit there for a whole hour and listen, that's up to you. You know, everybody's different, you know, so we just want to cover our bases on everything. In part 1, we're going to be covering the why of the Igniter Kit, the history of it, how it was formed from the Southeast Jurisdiction United Methodist Men and the Think Tank team. We're going to talk about our main goal, what it is, what we're wanting to accomplish. In part 2, we're going to be looking at some small groups, and we got 2 videos to go with it. We're going to, in part 2, the small group section, we're going to talk about defining affinity groups. We're going to define the curriculum driven groups, and we're going to define the transformation groups. And some of the small groups that we're going to look at that we feel is important is the discipleship that's offered through the Kentucky Conference, the Wesleyan transformation groups, like the class meeting, Inspire, and discipleship bands, and how they work. We're going to be looking at the Amending Through Faith, which is sponsored by the General Commission on United Methodist Men to help curb domestic violence amongst women. And we're going to be looking at Alpha, which is a phenomenal program. It's free. It's free for the training. It's all done online. I mean, with Alpha, like I said, you're going to learn that they've got sessions for the youth, for the college students and universities, for the adults, for the married couple, and for seniors. So, in wide variety of opportunities to start several different small groups of these categories. Maybe, you know, build up your church along with the United Methodist Men. And like I say, and we're going to show a video on the class meeting and a video on the Amending Through Faith put up by the General Conference. And then our third part, we're going to cover what's next, which was going to finish up with our 7 pillars that we started with. We're going to look at recreational ministries, strong missions, what you can do as missions. leadership focuses about rethinking how we're rethinking the brain and why we're rethinking and how we improvements we made. We're going to talk again about what do men need. Of course, we know the number one thing that all men, everybody needs is Jesus. We're going to talk about how to eat, how to do the each one reach one section. Very simple. And then we're going to talk about the next step, and then the last slide will have how you can contact us if you have more information. So we're going to continue on to the first part. The Southeast jurisdiction is composed of 12 to 13 states in the southeastern part of the U.S. All of the presidents of the conference, United Methodist men from each state, decided it was time to put a group together to look at what United Methodists could do all across from Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, and all the way up to Kentucky, to Virginia, and back down to Florida. What could we do to reach out to men in the age group 18 to 40? Actually, that should be 18 to 50. The president of the Southeast jurisdiction asked all the conference presidents to identify one person who would represent that conference. Our conference president, Mark Steins, reached out to Reverend Drew Oakley from Emmanuel United Methodist Church in northern Kentucky, and asked him if he wanted to attend and be a part of it, and he said he would. So there's 14 men that represent 11 conferences, as you can see. All but North Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and Holston were represented. The main reason for looking at this situation is because as we look around our churches and districts, we see there's a big gap in our ministry for the age group of 18 to 40. Like I said earlier, actually, in reality, it's 18 to 50-year-olds. There's not many in that category. And the main reason for looking at this is because we know the gap is there and making this an emergency type situation. And we really need to re-energize, ignite the men of God of all those generations. Now, like I said, if you look around, you will discover that there are not that many baby boomers that are not involved. So whether you're a baby boomer, the Generation Xers, the millennials, or the Generation Y as they call it can be called either one, and even up to date to what we call Generation Z / the Centennials. You know, they keep diminishing as we go down into the younger age groups. So the ultimate reason why we are all here is, as Matthew 28:19-20 says, we are called to make disciples. So our specific mission is, no matter what district in Kentucky, in the Kentucky Methodist Conference, it's all about making disciples. You see, what were we asked to do? Well, see, the whole idea is, what do we need to do that with? What can we do to close this gap? You see, this team was charged with the task of researching and developing ideas about growing in the ministry of men ages 18 to 40, like I say, actually 18 to 50, but that's my opinion. They wanted to look at what was the best practices were, what was happening in other conferences in other states. They were reaching the younger men, and they wanted to develop a planned document on how we should move forward. How can we reach the 18 to 40 or 18 to 50-year-olds? They created initiative programs specifically designed for that age group. They want to intertwine within the United Methodist Men's Ministry with some new approaches. The men across the Southeast jurisdiction shared those stories and their personal successes, what was working in their local churches. There was about 4 or 5 men who really poured themselves into this effort. There was Odell Horn from the North Georgia Conference, Charlie Lyons from the North Carolina Conference, and our very own Reverend Drew Oakley from Kentucky, who they all spent a lot of time on this. Many months were spent gathering research, sitting on webinars, and initial information was gathered during a workshop in the South Carolina Conference. South Carolina is one of the conferences that has already put this action into play and is working there for them. They met every 2 to 3 weeks via Zoom to make sure that the plan was moving forward. See, each conference across the Southeast jurisdiction was given the first draft of this Igniter Kit, and it was taken back so that they could revise it to what their conference or their church looks like. And you see, this is based on the 7 pillars that they came up with. You see, the first pillar is, like we always hear and everything, is the understanding why. You always got to have a why for why we do. So, like, we mean understanding a purpose. Why are we doing this? When you look at becoming right, you look at sanctifying grace. What we accomplish here is that the internal part of getting ourselves ready and prepared and sanctified so we become more like Christ. So why do we do that? And what is the fruit? You see, John 15 talks about that fruit. You see, this fruit is the fruit of our labors, is to make disciples. We are not finished when we become right. All of becoming right is so that we can go and make disciples for the transformation of the world. Make disciples for the transformation of the Kentucky Conference. Make disciples for the transformation of the Southeast District, South Central District, or wherever district that where you're located in the conference. You know, and we can even go down a step further. We can take your church, making disciples for the transformation, like my church, Junction City, making disciples for the transformation of Olive Branch, Corbin, Trinity, or Augusta, or wherever your church is located. So you see, that is our why, and this is why we exist. Transformational church ministry is the second pillar. And you know, it really does hinge or depend upon small groups. It has been found that small groups really do work with younger men, older men, middle-aged men, and even women. In fact, it actually works with everybody when we take a really hard, close look at it. And our third pillar is recreational ministry. This is composed of small group recreation activities that consist of sports ministry, like most men like, you know, and hobbies. You know, even I hate to include this, but I like the women's quilters. They make some good blankets. You know, even men can go in and make blankets these days and learn from the women on it. You know, they can do artwork like painting and crafts. You know, learning how to fix cars. You might have a mechanic in your church that would love to teach people how to fix cars and build cars and stuff. Painters, bodymen, you name it. Activities that groups within the church have a similar interest. Our fourth pillar is strong ministry. Now, that's not a big surprise here. We've all been involved in missions for many years. You know, like even during the annual conference, we have that day of serving on Tuesday afternoon. Everybody goes out and serves the community mission. You know, whether it's packing the health kits that are brought in, working at the local food pantry, visiting the nursing home. I mean, we do this as a conference during annual conference. You know, and we also have the flood buckets that is put out. You know, that our disaster coordinators would like for us to be gathering all the time and stuff like that. I mean, even small ministries within our church, like here at Junction, we also have a book link ministry where we donate Christian religious books to the book link ministry, which goes overseas to help younger kids get the word of God to them. You know, so like I say, we've been involved in missions for years. It doesn't matter. Anything you do to help people is a type of mission. Pillar 5 is the leadership development. We also have been involved with the leadership development for years. Pillar 6 is revisiting our brain. United Methodist Men resonates with people our own age, and we really don't resonate or associate with the younger men as much. Now you see, South Carolina called it the Men in Ministry. We are looking to have a Men in Ministry as a subgroup of the United Methodist Men. So really, we're looking at having 2 brands. You know, the United Methodist Men for those that want to be part of the United Methodist Men, and Men in Ministry for those that want to be part of the Men in Ministry, which we hope it will help reach out to the younger men, but some may want to be a part of both, and that's good. Pass your knowledge along both groups, that's fine. And our last pillar is the each one reach one model of growth. Now you see, this came from the Patrick Morley series, Man in the Mirror study that he puts out. Really, it's the Man Reaching Men series. And the first lesson in that series is how one cup of coffee can change your. Now, if you ain't watched that, and you really need to watch it, it really gets to you. But you see, at the end of this first session of this Bible study, Patrick Morley challenges the men to take some new men they meet out for coffee and just get them talking, to getting to know them through a general conversation. You see, discipleship is you asking someone to get a cup of coffee. And it's like building a relationship. Once you get to know them, you start building that trust. You know, on the first time you go out for coffee, you may not trust each other as much, you know, and it takes time to get to know each other. So you don't even have to ask so many questions. If you just sit there and just think for a little bit and stuff, and find something that you're interested both in. You know, and this is what really this last pillar is about. What they did to begin to communicate the research and the finding. You see, we want to give you a little more history on this. Once this draft was put together, the Young Men Think Tank team presented this at the National Association of Conference Presidents. The Methodist Church is all across the U.S. So basically there's 5 jurisdictions: Western, South Central, North Central, Northeast, and Southeast. And again, the Southeast jurisdiction makes up approximately 1/5 of the U.S. Methodist presence. And then there's a global presence of the Methodist Church in Africa, Asia, Europe as well. The Southeast jurisdiction has a significant section of the United Methodist Men. This is where most of the innovation is currently happening within the United Methodist Men. The Southeast jurisdiction is where the largest number of the Methodist men are. You see, it was presented at the National Association of Conference Presidents every February in Nashville. You see, they travel throughout the various conferences within the Southeast jurisdiction, presenting to each conference United Methodist Men groups. And you see, South Carolina's already began this process. They're really actually ahead of us, along with Mississippi. They have had this published in the United Methodist Men magazine and on the General Commission of the United Methodist Men website. You see, there's been a lot of action and a lot of trying to get the message out. As I said earlier, the goal is to make disciples. Why is that just that simple? Just as Matthew 28:19-20 said, "Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you even unto the end of the earth." Ain't that nice knowing that God's going to be with us as we're doing this? He's going to get us through it. So you see, our goal is making disciples. As we come back to finish talking about our first pillar, which was to understand our why, you see, making disciples is our why. It can be complex. It can be, and it is multifaceted. It is not easy, and it takes a lot of patience because it's a one-on-one relationship. And building a one-on-one relationship. That is the purpose of the United Methodist Men. You see, if I would talk about the purpose of the United Methodist Women, that would be the same thing, making disciples of women. But you see, our specific purpose is men, reaching men to help them to become sanctified, helping them to become right, so that they can go make another disciple, and they can make another disciple, which what we call regenerative disciple making and generational disciple making, so we can keep multiplying